It annoys me that there is a false sense of urgency in corporate jobs. I've had many corporate jobs where my manager insists on getting something done immediately because it is urgent or high priority. I at first felt awful if I didn't get something within a specific deadline. But then I started really thinking about it and realized the absurdity of it all. Almost no one in a corporate setting is saving lives. We aren't surgeons, firefighters, or other first responders. I'm at a desk looking at spreadsheets and writing papers. Why is that urgent? And yes, we have clients as well, but at the end of the day, if we don't meet a deadline due to the absurd amount of work and unreasonable timelines, then so what? The corporate world has made me feel constantly stressed, like every single thing is an emergency. And if I don't get it in on time, then I'm ruining a life. It took me a long time to realize this, but I'm still working on shifting my mentality to reflect this change. Nearly every job. I left a job in emergency services and took up one at a local supermarket. I was criticized for not working with urgency, and I asked if I wasn't being fast enough. They said, "No, you're keeping pace. You just don't seem to be taking the job too seriously." I was like, I've just come from urgent response driving, attending car accidents, etc., and you want me to stress about stocking up the Cheerios? When I quit a couple months later, the deputy manager said something about me never really liking it there, and I said, it was just a job, and he was like, yeah. That's not really the right way to think about it though. All that urgency isn't even about your clients. It's all about shareholders and executives. The more efficiently and quickly you do your job, the bigger their bonuses. Tell your boss if it is a constant emergency, then nothing is an emergency, everything is normal. Ask him to define which item is the emergency, i.e., ask them to prioritize things. I hate this system they've forced on us. I'm currently on vacation and fighting the urge to check my work emails, etc. I'm not going to, but the brainwashing I've had over many years is hard to fight. Everything is an urgent emergency. So stupid. When everything is urgent, nothing is. I used to work for an e-commerce company that sold clothing in the surf industry. I was their photographer for about 16 years. I used to get stressed about getting things shot and on the site. Then, had an epiphany one day. We just sell freaking t-shirts. No one is dying. At one point we got new ownership from Australia. Nice guys. But they had zero business sense on how to run a company in the US. Our head buyer and VP of marketing were arguing loudly in the office one day. The CEO comes into the photo studio a little distraught and we start talking. He's shaken that people are arguing like that. I looked at him and said, "They haven't realized we just sell t-shirts here. We aren't curing cancer. No one is dying because of what we do here." He was initially taken aback, but then agreed with me. People are way too stressed for zero reason most of the time. I used to work in corporate offices. Now I work back-end IT in a hospital. The stress has reduced by about 80%, and when I have an emergency, once or twice a year down from bi-weekly, it's an actual emergency affecting patient care. I honestly think the people in corporate offices have never faced something with real stakes in their lives. I remember Googling culture of urgency because everyone around me was basically drowning at my job because of this. And it was always so unnecessary. I wanted to find ways to address it. What I found instead of ways to change it was article after article on how to promote a culture of urgency. I learned that it was a deliberate tactic. I honestly don't do well with time crunch and stress. But every job these days is looking for someone with a drive to compete who works well under pressure. My dude, I just have a drive to pay my damn bills. I've got enough to worry about without constant pushing. When everything is urgent, nothing is. Exactly right. The food chain exerts pressure downward as the more powerful get more hungry and have the technology to enable more work with the bandwidth to ignore the pain by building a fleet of middle managers to churn as any individual or group of them fail to deliver the results demanded by that hunger. Management wants us to knock out things and makes the entire job sound like everything is critical. To get movement with laughable levels of micromanagement. And then when any boundaries for mental stability are attempted, dismissive commentary about how normal that environment is becomes the topic, and the employees who struggle get churned out by managers who don't want to be churned out themselves. It's a rat race, and even in the more progressive companies at the top, the demand for achievement, power, and profit still dwarf any concern for people, peace, or benevolence. We have some very inhumane expectations of people in this advanced age. In the early 2000s, I was fired for my utter and complete lack of urgency when I worked in the local hospital. So far, totally understandable. Maybe I'm a doctor or nurse. Maybe I'm a transporter or stock supplies. However, I was a cashier in the cafeteria. Tears of joy. I was a senior manager at a corporation during a strike. Our primary focus was supporting the products in use. In the middle of this, I had to ignore all those customer needs to find a golf club for our CEO that was delivered to his office at the wrong location. He had multiple offices and personal planes to get him around. Nothing was as important as his Big Bertha driver. Your success in a corporation is never about how well you do your job, but how well you manage up the organization chart. During my long high-tech corporate career, I learned to simply ignore major projects that came out of the blue, were illogical and not well defined. I saved about 30% of my time this way. For legit projects, I would do minimum since they were typically severely under-supported and working on an executive timeline. Unfortunately, the reason everything is urgent is that businesses do not staff appropriately. It should not be a burden for someone to take a single day off for an emergency. But it always is. It has become standard to be understaffed. And the only way I see this changing is serious reform that must come from a collective bargaining place, i.e. strong unions. In my experience, most deadlines are set internally within corporations, so the urgency tends to be placed on themselves. I've worked in corporate America for over 13 years, and anytime someone comes with something urgent, I tend to have them explain what's urgent. I also ask them to tell me what is on the plate that isn't urgent and force them to remove work before I give it someone else. No is a really powerful world, especially when it makes people uncomfortable to remove work that's urgent to someone else. Sure. Do you want me to drop everything I'm doing to add the comma that you missed when proofreading in the first place? Quote, sure. Do you want me to drop everything I'm doing to add the comma that you missed when proofreading in the first place? Quote, yes. 100 times per day. Why is this deliverable late? Quote, you mean the thing didn't get updated that doesn't launch for 4 weeks and you interrupted me 100s of times with inane requests? Quote, never mind. I have the list of requests you've been making. I document them all. I'll schedule an 8-hour meeting to go through them one by one. There is some version of this happening everywhere. I work at a furniture warehouse and once had the boss tell me that, what if a surgeon gets home and doesn't have a bed to sleep on because we didn't rush? My response was that he could sleep on the couch for the night. After having a heart attack due to working in an environment like this for years, I have lost all patience for this emergency approach. Absolutely not worth it. When everything is an emergency, nothing is an emergency. It's about the never-ending quest to exploit workers as much as possible. Capitalism has been misclassified as an economic system. It's actually a death cult.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.